Hey there. You ready to get those creative juices flowing? You asked for like the inside scoop on oil painting, and we've got a real treat for you today.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to deep dive into this YouTube video by Dixon. He is a working artist,
Okay.
and he shares his process in this really down-to-earth way.
Mm-hmm.
It's not one of those like overly polished tutorials.
Right.
It feels more like you're right there in his studio
Yeah.
watching him make decisions and like,
Right.
yes, even mistakes on the fly.
And that's what makes it so refreshing.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from those moments where things don't go exactly as planned. He embraces them, turns them into learning opportunities, which I think is so encouraging for beginners especially.
Absolutely. He's this way of making you feel like you can totally do this too. Like there's no pressure to be perfect.
Right.
Just have fun and experiment.
Yeah.
And speaking of keeping it real, I
Yeah.
love how he's not using some crazy expensive supplies.
Right.
Nope, it's all basic stuff, proving you don't need a fancy studio to create something beautiful.
Right. And even with those basic materials, he specifically mentions using cadmium yellow, which has that almost glowing quality, and phthalo green, a color that always makes me think of cool, deep shadows. He's able to create a whole world of depth and atmosphere. Just hearing those names conjures up such vivid images in my mind.
It's like he's saying, look, you can achieve incredible things with what you already have.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, he doesn't even do those meticulous preliminary sketches that some artists swear by.
Oh,
He
wow.
jumps right in, drawing directly onto the canvas.
That's what's so fascinating about watching him work. It's like he's pulling images from a mental library built over years of observing the world, seeing those shapes, light and shadow, and translating them directly onto the canvas.
It's almost like he's freestyling with a paintbrush, building the composition as he goes. And he starts with this technique he calls blocking in.
Which is a crucial first step, really.
Yeah,
Imagine laying the foundation for a house. You're not focused on the finer details yet, right? It's about establishing the big picture, the overall structure. And that's what blocking in is all about. He uses these large, inexpensive brushes so you don't feel precious about making those initial marks and broad strokes to capture the essence of the scene, where the light hits, where the shadows fall, creating a sense of depth and dimension from the get-go.
and he doesn't just lay down flat colors either. He mixes everything directly on the canvas, creating these subtle variations in depth. I find it mesmerizing to watch him work, blending and layering the colors right there in front of you.
What's really interesting is that he isn't afraid to use mineral spirits either, both for blending and to get those softer effects. It's a classic oil painting technique that can seem kind of intimidating to beginners, but he demonstrates it in this really approachable way.
It's like he's demystifying the process,
Okay.
showing you that it's not some magical secret,
Right.
just another tool to help you achieve your vision. And remember how we talked about him embracing mistakes?
Yeah.
There's this one point where he mixes a color, takes a look at it, and realizes it's not quite what he intended.
Hmm.
But instead of freaking out, he just rolls with it.
It's a brilliant lesson in adaptability, wouldn't you say? In that moment, he teaches you so much more than just how to mix a certain color. He's showing you the importance of being present, of seeing the potential in every brushstroke, even the ones that don't go according to plan.
Exactly. And sometimes those happy accidents end up being the most interesting parts of the painting, adding a touch of serendipity and surprise that you couldn't have planned even if you tried.
It's like he's saying, hey, let go of the need to control every little thing and allow yourself to be surprised by the process. And that's where the magic happens, when you're open to those unexpected turns.
And he throws in these little golden nuggets of wisdom along the way.
Right.
Like when he talks about the wet-on-wet technique.
Yeah.
I had heard of it before, but never really understood how it worked.
It's one of those fundamental oil painting techniques that sounds more complicated than it is, really. Basically, you're applying a layer of wet paint onto another wet layer beneath it. And what Dixon does so skillfully is use this technique to create those seamless blends and subtle transitions, especially when he's working on the sky and clouds.
It's amazing how he makes it look so effortless.
Right.
Almost like the paint is melting into itself.
Yeah.
Then there's the dry brush technique, which always seemed counterintuitive to me, using a dry brush with oil paint.
Yeah.
But he uses it to create this incredible texture and softness, especially when he's suggesting foliage or the rough bark of a tree.
It's all about controlling the amount of paint on your brush and using a light touch. You're not laying down a thick layer of paint, but rather allowing the brush to barely graze the surface, picking up the texture of the canvas beneath. It creates this wonderful sense of atmosphere and depth.
And then there's the whisking technique.
Yeah.
I swear I could almost hear Bob Ross's voice in my head when he started doing that, to create those soft, fluffy clouds.
It's true. And it just goes to show that you can find inspiration in the most unexpected places. Even if you think you know a technique, there's always something near to learn a different way of applying it, a fresh perspective that can breathe new life into your work.
It's that willingness to experiment and learn from others that's so inspiring, I think. And what really struck me about Dixon's teaching is that it's about so much more than just the technical aspects of painting. It's almost like he's giving you permission to see the world through an artist's eyes.
That's such a great point. It's about observation, interpretation, and finding your own unique way of expressing what you see and feel.
Right.
He encourages you to look beyond the surface, to see the personality in a landscape, the energy in a stroke of paint.
Right. Like instead of just saying, now I'm adding the sun,
Right.
he'll say something like, look how the sun is trying its hardest to break through those clouds. And suddenly it's not just a circle of yellow paint anymore, it's this dynamic force full of life and movement.
He wants you to connect with the scene on an emotional level, to feel the warmth of the sun, the coolness of the shadows, the stillness of the water. It's about capturing the essence of a moment, not just replicating what you see.
And that relaxed attitude towards mistakes, it's so refreshing and liberating. It's like he's giving you permission to let go of that inner critic and just enjoy the process of exploration and discovery. Because ultimately, isn't that what art is all about?
Absolutely. The joy of creation, the thrill of experimentation, the satisfaction of bringing something beautiful into the world, even if it's just for yourself. It's about
Right.
embracing the journey, not just striving for a perfect end result.
He makes you want to grab a brush and just play with color to see what happens when you mix this with that.
Right.
To not be afraid of making a mess.
And that fearlessness, that sense of playfulness, is what often leads to the most unexpected and rewarding discoveries.
Speaking of discoveries, there's this one moment in the video that really got me thinking. He's talking about black paint and how he used to avoid it like the plague.
Because it can be such a harsh, unforgiving color if you're not careful with it.
Right. But then he goes on to say that he's come to realize that black is really just a combination of other colors.
Wow.
And that completely blew my mind.
It's a simple statement, but it has such profound implications, don't you think? It makes you question everything you thought you knew about color.
Exactly. We tend to think of black as this absolute, this void. But in reality, it's so much more nuanced than that. It's a complex interplay of light and shadow, warm and cool tones all coming together to create this illusion of darkness.
And it makes you wonder, what other preconceived notions are we clinging to both in art and in life? What possibilities are we limiting ourselves from because we're so afraid to challenge the status quo, to see things from a different perspective?
It's like he's saying, don't be afraid to question everything, even the things that seem set in stone. Because sometimes the most groundbreaking discoveries come from challenging those long-held assumptions.
Exactly. And that's what makes Dixon's approach to art and to life so inspiring. He's not just teaching you how to paint a tree or a cloud, he's teaching you how to see the world with fresh eyes, to embrace the unexpected, and to find beauty in the most unlikely of places.
It's a powerful message and one that I think we can all learn from. So as you embark on your own oil painting journey, remember Dixon's words. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, to experiment, to break the rules, because it's in those moments of imperfection that true creativity often lies.
He's given you a glimpse into his process, shared his hard-won insights, and now it's your turn to take what you learn and make it your own. Don't worry about replicating his style, or anyone else's for that matter. Find your own voice, your own perspective, and let it shine through in your work.
He really makes you want to grab a brush and just see what happens, doesn't he? To play with color, texture, and light, and not be afraid of the outcome. And who knows, maybe you'll even discover a new shade of black along the way.
Now, wouldn't that be something? Remember, every masterpiece starts with a single brushstroke. So go out there, experiment, have fun, and most importantly, enjoy the journey.
And that is a perfect note to end on. I don't know about you, but I am feeling so inspired right now.
Me too. I kind of want to go out and buy some paint.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of oil painting with Alan Dixon. We'll see you next time.